Your daily choices create your habits. These habits set your destiny. My friends, 10 to 15 minutes each and every day. Make that a daily habit, as I have for years. In addition to recording this show and posting it up for you every day, along with the trainings that we record and put out, and then the weekly vertical crossovers I do for the Patreon members every week, the 3-wave trades for them, and of course for everyone, which will come out as soon as the show's put on the air today, charting cryptos, commodities, and currencies. I do all of that for you guys in addition to my trading. I find time for it in my busy schedule. You can too, if you put a priority on it. Don't worry about how long it will take, because my friends, once you master the markets, you'll make up for all the time you ever spent. Now let's look and see what these stock charts are showing us today. Market's got another 40 minutes or so. I'm doing this at 3:20. And we see that stocks and gold are down, bonds up a little bit. Bitcoin, it's interesting. The Bitcoin ETF is up. Bitcoin 24-hour-a-day chart is down. But let's pay attention first to the S&P 500 and look at the volume. Now, the red here doesn't mean negative volume for the week. It means that we started off lower than where things closed last Friday. So on Monday, markets opened lower than where they did on Friday. That's what gives you the red candle. That's because that's how we have our volume chart set up. But it's interesting. It gives you a good perspective, particularly when you have the markets trending down. You see that things are dropping, or that's ending, and perhaps things are getting ready to roll back up. Now, when we look at where we are now, we can see our high. We've been talking about this all week. Last week was 518.22. This week, 517.38. So again, we haven't hit the high of the prior week. We have lots of volume with a little bitty candle. What is that telling us? Well, it can tell us any number of things. We got a lot of people buying, a lot of people selling. Now, do folks think the market is still going to go up higher? Well, we have a green candle, but again, we don't have one of those high volume tops because we're not getting as high as last week. But the small candle is telling us that, again, when we start looking at the average pace of price movement, it has slowed down drastically. Then why in the world would you have all this volume? Could be hitting an interim top. So we'll pay attention particularly as to what happens as we get into this next week. Look at the 2-day chart, even more pronounced. We see the 2-day chart just above the weekly trend line, but we have a doji, the most indecisive candle that you can have, and super high volume. Highest volume we see going back, to last year. I mean, super high volume. So again, perhaps telling us that, we could have an interim top. It's really telling us is we have tons and tons of indecision. A lot of people buying, a lot of people selling, but look at what price has done. Ends the week with virtually nothing. So again, we're paying close attention to this. As we look at the 2-day chart, go from the 2-day rather to the half day, you can see on Monday where we see things are, Monday morning hit the low, and then move up through the week and then back down through the low of last week. Well, I take that back, right there at it. Well, shouldn't I have known that? Because when we look at the doji, we can see how much things have really peaked off, to give us that. So again, and look at all the volume that we had on Thursday afternoon, and then the lack of a whole lot of volume this afternoon so far. We had average volume in the morning. And of course, this is a dividend day for SPY. So we, again, will pay close attention as to where these charts go this next week. I think that could be very decisive for us in seeing whether this market has topped out or it's digesting those last few gains and getting ready to boom up again, which we've seen happen. Now let's move on to the Qs. The NASDAQ 100. Right now, by the way, the S&P down about 1%. NASDAQ down 1.10%. Now, this is worse. We had the doji sitting on the weekly trend line on the 2-day, on the S&P 500. On the NASDAQ 100, we are below that trend line. We pretty much have a doji there, a little above average volume, super high volume on the 2-day chart. Again, a spinning top below the weekly trend line. And of course, we've had the half day below the weekly trend line since it pushed through in the morning on Monday, and then has tried to move up, but has consistently stayed below it. So we will be paying close attention as to where things go this next week. We have a red spinning top. Now, could you go ahead and enter into a short position? You could. You could do that. I would like to see some more confirmation, but again, we do have an interim high with good volume. We have a spinning top, a doji with good volume. And again, the way our chart typically projects to us, you can see it here where things bottomed and went back up. High volume with the bottom. Now, typically, we again like to see a candle there and then a spinning top or a doji when things turn around. Well, that's the opposite of what we see right here. That is going from a move up to a move down. I would not be surprised if over the course of this next week, we see the NASDAQ 100 pull back. Now, again, as we look at things, we didn't see that happen this last time, but we didn't have the volume, did we, to support it? We had low volume with the interim high. And then, of course, when things started to move down, we didn't have above average volume. So, again, not the setup that we have here. So we'll watch as we get into this next week as to where things are moving. But our typical signal is being met here for things to roll over. What's up with 20-year bonds? Now, we've been very ambivalent on 20-year bonds because we've had nothing to help us volume-wise corroborate what we see going on with the Heiken Ashi candlesticks. Today, right now, 0.13. We have a doji for the week. Lots of indecision sitting right there on a very poor trend line. It's almost flat. We look at where things are on the 2-day, rotating over, going down. Now, maybe this is the portent of where things are going to go this next week, but we don't have any volume to back it up on the weekly chart. We have volume on the 2-day, but that's not on the weekly. That's just 2 days. And we look at where things are on the half day, and we can see since Monday, things have just been moving down, and they, pretty much stopped that down move on Thursday. I guess it's trickled a little bit further down, but, most of that down movement took place on Tuesday and Wednesday. So what are we waiting for? Well, we're waiting for some volume to give us an idea as to how to read the candlesticks. Let's look at where we are on gold, pulling back 0.26%. Of course, we can see where gold hit its high last Friday in the morning. And we can, of course, see this high last week, 203.30, this week 202.41. So again, about 90 cents less this week than last week. And gold, we can see over the course of the prior 4 days, where gold over this last week, the Tuesday, Wednesday, the Thursday, Friday 2-day candles, where they have blown off both size and steam, not getting anywhere near the prior high. Still sitting there above the weekly trend line, so is the 2-day. But again, gold is either digesting its gains, getting ready to move up again, or it's just topped out. Next week should give us a much better idea, perhaps be decisive. Now, where are we on HODL, which is, of course, the Bitcoin ETF put out by Van Eck Bitcoin Trust? We have a higher high this week. We have lots and lots of volume. This latest 2-day candle, that represents Thursday and Friday, blowing off a lot of that energy. Does have average volume, but the volume significantly less than the prior 2 2-day candles. More indecision with that spinning top, still above the weekly trend line. Half day has been pulling back on Thursday, Friday morning, and then came up some on Friday afternoon. Like I said, right now, just over 1%. If we look at 24-hour-a-day Bitcoin, of course, we can see where Bitcoin at 5:45 a.m. on Thursday moved down, popped up some in the evening on Thursday, then down later in the day and in the early morning on Friday, really rocketing down that 230 195-minute chart. Then at 5:45, sort of completed that down move, chalked itself up since 12:15, but did not make up for the rundown of about 1.86% right now. So again, the chart that we practice and trade off of, and the reason, of course, we're using 24-hour-a-day Bitcoin is to get the volume estimates, which help us so much. But as we look at where HODL is, it is up for the day, and we'll see just what happens as we move into Monday. But needless to say, we're still long Bitcoin. That is where we are, folks. Hope that you're using this information to help you practice trade. Patreon members, we posted for you last night 3-wave trades, charting cryptos, commodities, and currencies, and your 20 weekly vertical crossovers. I think we had 5 up and 15 down, so hopefully you're making use of that information. If you're not a Patreon supporter, that we got 3 different levels. We would love to have your help underwrite the cost of the channel. Again, we appreciate all of you. God bless, my friends. Have a great weekend. All the best from the whole team at Charting Wealth World Headquarters.